Hello and welcome. And look who I have with me tonight. I have Jill Bennett, and she is with she is up actually just up in Jacksonville, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Really
and
close. Yeah.
she is my Protestant conscience here, and she is with Webb's channel called Graceful Answers. And you've been on it before, but I was thinking about I wasn't actually going to do a stream. I was just sort of like enjoying my time off for Easter, and then I said, you know what? A couple things hit me just about Good Friday and about what does it mean and why are we saying good and I had a couple theological thoughts and I said let's do a faith stream and then I said but I'm going to do it myself. What do I know? I know nothing, right?
Oh,
So I was like, let me bring
wow.
on Jill. She's like a very you actually teach Bible studies, right?
I do. I do. I love teaching apologetics. I love teaching just digging through the Bible, hitting the hard questions. That's my jam.
That's your jam. Well, and we just got started, so let's say hello to see who's up, show up. You know, if you're here on a Friday, it's Good Friday. God bless you. We're going to have a little faith discussion. You know, it's going to be fun though. I think we've got a lot of interesting topics that'll keep you stimulated. So don't run off. Let's talk and have some fun. And let's see, we got Molten Salt and Cynthia. Good to see you. Shane is my loyal mod. Good to see you, Shane. And Bella the Bayou, of course, number one over on Rumble. And Geronimo Kennels. What is great. That's a funny name. And Sadie, nice to see you. And there's Jill. See, she's in the chat. And Danielle, my faithful look, she's got a wrench. So good to see you all. And thank you for anybody who's replaying this because in Royal Wolf, I see you, you know, see you're in there. The first thing we were talking about is about that very topic about fun, because you know I think that there's a secular delusion, and I don't know where it's coming from, but let's just debunk it because you and I have faith. Now I'm a Catholic, you're a Protestant, we're both Christians, and I think we both have faith as a big part of who we are. But does that mean we don't have any fun, Jill?
Oh, I would hope not. No, absolutely not. We have a good time.
Can you enjoy music?
Oh, 100%. You and I, we share some musical taste.
Rock and roll, man. How about Ginger, man? Is Ginger awesome?
Right?
Hey, I gotta say something. I got the ginger hat over here. So let's just for a
There you
second.
go.
I
There you
got to
go.
tell you a little secret. My son got kicked out of a club for moshing.
Oh my goodness. Were you proud?
I'm proud. I'm very
You're
proud.
proud.
So
Good.
yeah, and oh, Geronimo Kennels, you've been shouting rehabbing rescues for 20 years.
Wow.
Excellent. I hope you've got Brucey the one-eyed wonder dog because that is a rescue dog story, right? Um, and if not, you can go to my website, stevegosney.com, and I'll read it to you for free. You can come and listen to me talking.
Oh,
Um,
that's sweet.
yeah, Danielle, you're a pal, and she's a rocker. Danielle is she's a Christian, has lots of good sober fun. And you know, we can I don't have I was gonna pour wine, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. This idea that you can't, I mean, I think if you're Christian, I've been happier since I've had faith.
Oh,
It's
me too.
like things are
100%.
stable and you can appreciate beauty in all its forms. And I love music. Music is beautiful. Um, you know, Christians are, and we don't have sex, we Christians, right?
Oh, never.
Never. Only
Immaculate
once
conception,
I had it
easy.
once to procreate, and that was it.
Right, right, right. Only for that. Only for that.
And then,
That
of
that's
course,
allowed.
like, yeah, and you
Oh
know,
dear.
of course, in the Catholic Church, wine is part of our ceremony. So, I mean,
Right,
come on.
right.
You know, it's excess, but I mean, when you drink to excess or have anything, is that really fun?
No,
No. So you
absolutely
know,
not.
you enjoy, you know, and we have great faith and great, you know, I don't know. I just don't know where this is coming from. People like say, if you're having fun, that you're not being a Christian, right? I mean, but you know what I'm talking about,
I do.
right?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Before
Yeah.
my husband came to faith, he was really concerned that he was going to lose all his friends and never have fun again, that he would have to give up everything he enjoyed. And he's far happier now than he ever was. And yeah, he gave up a few things, but those were his choice to give up because he found that they weren't benefiting his life the way he thought they were. So
Well, and
he's so
another
much
thing,
better off now.
I find that, and if we make a mistake, which we are all fallen, we're all Christians needing help. We need help to get out of the hole, right? If you make a mistake and you don't have faith, you're forever trapped in that hole, and you define yourself by all of your mistakes. And how do I ever crawl out? Well, maybe I'm just evil. Maybe I'm just bad. And that's defined. So I don't have faith. And so I define myself because I'm a, or what.
Yeah.
But it's like, wait a second. If I have faith, I have forgiveness. God takes my sins from me and allows me to move forward. It's sort of an odd thing to explain, but to people, but it's like, okay, I'm not perfect. I try my best, but I know I'm going to fail. I know I will, I continue to do, but it's not an excuse, but it allows me to move beyond my sin. Whereas
That's
if
what
you
I'm gonna think
don't
about.
have forgiveness in your life,
What
you
do you
can
do?
get trapped by your sin.
I mean, what do you do? What do you do with your sin? What do you do with acknowledging the mistakes you've made? I mean, they hang on you. They weigh you down. You try to forget, you can't forget. What do you do to try to get past it? I mean, you can do therapy all you want, but if there's no real understanding of where does it go, it becomes part of your identity. And you're right.
And you have
I've
no
never
way to
thought of it that
rid
way.
yourself, no way of ridding
Exactly.
yourself of that from your identity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've never
So
thought of it that way. That's really clever. That's really
yeah,
well said.
well, I thank you. I wrote a book on this.
Yeah, I know. You did a
But
good
oh, by the
job.
way, yeah, and Jill's a big fan. She's a fan of mine, and she's always flattered. I'm so flattered that such a faithful and educated person in Florida actually follows my stuff. But you
You're
read
so
Prepare.
funny.
You read
Yes,
Prepare.
absolutely. I love your
Well,
books. You're a
what did
great
you think
author.
about my faith sections?
I like your face. I love how you explain your thoughts. You explain the process. You don't just lay it down and expect people to, accept it or deny it. You give a very thorough and understandable explanation for why you believe the way you do. And even those who disagree with you can't argue with your logic. You know? You give both sides. You do a great job. Oh, Danielle,
You
gonna make me
did, yes.
blush.
Flush. That's okay. I know we got the expert. And actually, this stream, it's not going to go too long. I'm expecting to end about 9:05 because the expert has to stream at 9:05. So we're going to dump. I've already got it already preset. So I don't have to do
Nice.
the big
Well
thing
done.
because I saw he was doing a stream. I'm like, I'll let the expert. So everybody's going to go over there. So we're just going to have a little discussion about Good Friday, about faith. And the first topic I wanted to approach you about is and again, one of these, we need to debunk myths about our
Yes.
faith.
Oh, sorry.
And one of those myths is I find it, and I come from a position of really not caring about faith, to somebody who brought it
Hmm.
into my life and it's made my life better, and I define myself by that for sure. But it's almost like I've just given myself, and then I can function, right? I mean, it's not like,
Yeah.
but one of those questions that I think people attack is the historical figure of Jesus, the reality that Jesus walked on this earth actually. Okay, and there's that reality, that fact, and then there is Christ the Savior, the
Right.
the, the Jesus, the theological implications of Jesus, and so, which is a matter of faith. It's a leap of faith. It's something that I don't believe you can prove. I think it is something that you have to believe. It comes from a faith. I talk all about this. But those who are not believers need to reconcile with the fact that Jesus did walk this earth. And I think the
Yes.
academics across the board really agree on the fact that Jesus is a historical figure. So now you're more of a fundamentalist, I think, but what is your perspective of the historical Jesus, not the
Right. Not the supernatural component. He is widely accepted by atheist and Christian scholars across the board as being um, someone who existed. And not only that, someone who died by crucifixion from the Romans. The resurrection is what people either accept or don't accept, the miracles. And there are those who study that and have gone through historical documents, and that's one of my biggest things. I struggled with apologetics. I struggled with the big questions for years, and I was so afraid to go look for the answers because I was afraid of what I would find. And it wasn't
well,
until I
and
was older that I dug through, and it's been so reassuring.
yeah, well, and
Right?
I'm going to, I studied some of this stuff back in the day, and I'm going to throw out a couple resources for those.
Do
And
it. Love it.
I tapped into the old library. So I've got two books here. The first is by A.N. Wilson, called Jesus a Life. Now, A.N. Wilson is a prominent atheist. Okay. And he has written a book on the historical figure of Jesus. And this is a very interesting book to look at it from as skeptical as you can come, right? But basically saying Jesus was a historical person that walked this earth. And this is from a very hardened atheist scholar. Now, if you don't want, just so we're clear, because we need to debunk some of the myths from the other side, the people that don't believe, if they don't believe, so, well, it's all a big myth. Well, no, you have to reconcile the fact that this is a real.
Look at it academically.
Now, this person is the historical figure of Jesus, E.P. Sanders. Now, I love this book. I say this is really good. He has a very particular theological view. He's a Protestant, and he just passed away, I think, in 22. But this book is very good. And this is, again, somebody told from a Protestant perspective, a Christian believer who talks about the historical documentation, the historical basis for Jesus. And it's very interesting, very good. So there's two academic tones. Most people who look in the subject know that Jesus is a real figure in history. Apart from the theological implications, it's one thing to say, well, I don't believe in Christianity. I don't believe that Jesus was the Savior, was the Messiah, you can say all that. But you've got to believe, as best as we can historically determine, that Jesus had a real ministry in Israel, and he preached. He was part of the Jewish tradition, and he was there. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. All those things that we recite in the Mass, those are historical fact.
They are. They're absolutely historical fact. There's tons. I really like that you brought those up, because when I first came to a mature faith, C.S. Lewis, he's the one that did the lunatic, liar, or Lord argument. He has to be one of the three. He lived, we know that, but he has to be one of the three. He has to be complete lunatic and believes what he's saying, even though it's not true, completely lying and knows he's lying, or he actually is who he says he is. So
right, that's one of the interesting. Well, you're talking, when we say apologetics, explain what an apologetic is.
A total nerd moment there. Apologetics is answering the questions that are thrown at you. It's the big questions. Why are we here? What do we believe? Why do we believe it? Do we have any basis for that? And being able to defend your faith from an intellectual perspective. And that's what C.S. Lewis opened up to me. He opened up that world to me. My favorites for this kind of stuff is J. Warner Wallace, Cold Case Christianity. They have movies as well that are a little bit easier to swallow. Lee Strobel did a fantastic one. He's the one that did Case for Christ. This guy, Wallace, was a cold case detective trying to disprove Christianity, ended up proving it. Same with Strobel. He was a journalist trying to disprove Christianity because his wife was a Christian and it irritated him. So he tried to disprove it, ended up proving it. And then, where is it? Habermas. This guy is the expert on the resurrection. If you have questions on whether or not the resurrection actually happened, and if there's a way to prove it, if there's a way to evidentiary, whatever that word is, Habermas, Gary Habermas. He's written a ton, but he's the expert on the resurrection. If you need to go directly to the expert, Gary Habermas is where it's at. So those are my favorite references for this. McDowell, the McDowell brothers did Evidence That Demands a Verdict. That has some great research. It's kind of like a textbook. He's gone through the big questions and answered it. So those are my favorites. So,
well, see, now it's interesting the way that you're speaking, and I think that we might have a disagreement here. All right, and okay. but that is the fodder for discussion, right? And because I believe in I think as a matter of historical fact, Jesus existed, right?
Yes.
But I think to say that he was the Christ, the Savior, the Messiah, and God's present on earth, right? To say that, I think that takes a leap of faith and cannot be proven rationally.
Interesting.
And it comes from Abolition of Man. I think C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man, which is one of my all-time great favorite reads that
you can't go wrong with Lewis.
C.S. Lewis. Here's another one, The Problem of Pain.
Rogue Mama.
He's so good. C.S. Lewis is so good. But I think that it's
his collection over there.
I think it's, we talk about the head, the chest, and the gut in the three levels of man under Abolition of Man, and that faith is a chest function. It's a valuation. It's not a rational function. Now, once you have made the leap of faith that is at the core,
Right.
everything is explained from that faith. But deep down at the core, it is an irrational something, an irrational leap of faith that's not subject to proof or convincing. And here's my
I can see
case
your
in
point
point
there.
of modern example of that is I would say that the person who's tried to prove God the most is in a current state is Jordan Peterson. And Jordan
Mm-hmm.
Peterson is incredibly brilliant, one of the most beautiful minds I've ever seen work, very yearning for the truth, slavishly dedicated to the truth, and dedicated his life to proving God,
Mm-hmm.
but has never, I mean, but I think he can't prove God. I think that he has
Mm-hmm.
tried his best. He needs to make a tiny leap of faith. Now, I went to saw him recently at the Orlando at the Kia Center. Amazing. This guy sold out 22,000 Kia
Wow.
Center. One guy talking on a stage, amazing about faith. And I suspect that he has made that leap, but maybe I'm
Hmm.
wrong.
I don't
The
know.
fact
I
is,
haven't
yeah,
heard anything he's done recently, so I really don't know where he stands right now.
well, he is somebody that he is, I think he acts as if God exists and he has struggled his entire brilliant life to prove it. And
Hmm.
it's like reading, it's God is something greater than what we can rationally understand and
Now
comprehend.
that
And
I
if our
agree
little
with.
minds have to, well, what is your thought on this?
Okay. Well, this is something I struggled with. My big question was evolution. So that's a whole nother day. But in the process of presenting this information and teaching it, I have gone through, and what it boils down to is you have evidence for and evidence against, and they're logical. You can look at it from a logical, intellectual perspective. And I brought out my notebook where I basically answer these questions. And if you take it from a purely philosophical perspective, intellectual perspective, you can prove the existence of God through not using the Bible, not using scripture at all. You can technically prove the existence of God through basic philosophical truths. There are standard philosophical truths. And if you take those and accept those standard philosophical truths that are standard in any argument, you can get there. It takes a little bit of time to get there, but there are people throughout that came before us that have thought through this and figured it out. And I've got some videos on my channel that are about a year old that go through the evidence for the existence of God, whether or not God exists. Can you prove that without using scripture? And so I've gone through and actually proven that you can. But again, that does take an element of faith, is to stop and listen to it and then to say, well, does that make sense to me? Can I accept that, or am I just going to reject it outright? So there is absolutely an element of faith, but there's also an element of taking the time and thinking it through, looking at the great minds that have come before us and say, I accept that or I reject that. So there is an element of faith, but I do believe that you can philosophically prove the existence of God, and you can do it scientifically as well. There's all sorts of evidence out there, and it takes hours to go through, but I hit it from all the different angles,
And
hoping
so
that
you
in a
have this on
combined
your
view,
channel.
I do. I've gone through this,
Do
and
you
I've
ever
gone through it
do
on a very surface level, but
do
it's
you ever
it's
do
fascinating.
Aquinas? Because Aquinas
I
addressed
do.
this. Yes.
What'd you say? A class?
Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, Aquinas. Yeah, of course. You got to quote Aquinas all over
Got
the
to quite. He's
place.
sort of the
Got to quote
foundation.
Aquinas.
And being
Yes.
the old Catholic, I got to go to my go-to reference book, which is the
Right,
Catechism of the
right.
Catholic Church. I find this to be wonderful. Now, I find this is almost like the textbook of my faith, and I can go
Oh, I
there,
like
and
that
it's like
too.
whenever I have a theological question, I can flip it open. I can read about why we do things in the Mass, why we have the sacraments we do, what the Lord's Prayer means, in a very in detailed faith-based thing. So I find the Catechism great. So I'm gonna. If anybody's never, I wasn't aware of this until I became Catholic, and I
It's free
really
online. You don't even have to buy it.
yeah, it's free online, but
Hmm.
I love books. You know, what can I say?
I do too.
Um,
Me too.
so it's a great resource, and it really is. In fact, it educated me. And somebody, what was it? Who was here? Who was just bought my death penalty debates book, because ultimately, I will say, we're way back when. Who bought my death penalty debates? Oh, shucks. Anyway, a lot of that question, here it is. T. Underwood, that question is resolved by the Catholic position. And so I would say, and I was wrestling with this a little bit recently for reasons unknown, that said, could I prosecute a death penalty case given my faith? And I had a little rumination on that. And I've thought about it a little more. I said, no has got to be my answer. But then the question becomes, okay, but could you assist in any way? And I think the way that I would have to answer that is I could do a guilt phase. And but I would not help the juror pick the jury because of the death qualification. And I could not do the penalty phase. So if I was being honest, now I haven't run that by my priest yet, but I think if I was going to have to split hairs and I was thrown into a situation where I might have to do that, I think I would have to answer, I could do the guilt phase, because ultimately I do think the ultimate punishment, that the maximum punishment allowed by law should be life in prison without parole. And that is my maximum.
Worse. I really do.
It is a lot worse. Yes,
so
that's
much
true.
worse. I can't imagine. That's like my biggest fear.
Yes.
We
No,
face
but
that a lot
the
in
thing is,
pharmacy as well. There are situations where you have to choose faith or the profession, and they spell it out for you. You're not allowed to just deny. You have to deny and transfer it to someone who will fill it. So it's a little bit clearer for us. You guys have a little bit more leeway in saying no, thank you.
yeah,
Plus,
I don't know
being
if we do.
Catholic, you've got someone to go to who's got all the answers, right? You've got a standard of here's what we believe, black and white. It's right there. Protestants, you got a little bit more wiggle room. You got to figure it out for yourself a little bit. It's harder.
But the Catholic Church has not always been against the death penalty. I mean, there was wiggle room. It's a relatively recent encyclical that has changed that, but a lot of that is due to a lot of modern prison systems, evaluations, a lot of science. There's things that have changed in the world that have allowed us, because before, life in prison without parole, yeah, but you're in the old West and you break out of prison, but that's just not a reality anymore.
Right.
And there's a lot of understandings too. I don't want to turn this into a death penalty case, but I do want to talk about death penalty desires. And I'll say that, look, I've got two versions. I'll take the stickers off.
I love that you did two versions.
So I've got two versions.
Happy. I don't know why, but that makes me so happy. That's so.
And I will say that everything has been mailed out as of today, including the hardcovers. Everything is completely fulfilled. You'll be getting this within the next few days if you don't already have it. Now we've got the pink death penalty desires, passion, lust, and murder. And then I've got the PG version, death penalty desired, passion, and murder. See, I took the lust out.
And you made it past tense, because we're Christian. We don't have lust anymore, right?
Well, right. No, there's no lust. We can't even talk about it.
No,
we can't even create a fictionalized account.
That's funny. I do love that, though. I love that you did two versions. That makes me happy, because there are situations where you wouldn't want to recommend a book that's got steam, but there's a version you could recommend.
Well, actually, I'm using the PG version. I'm going to be using it as a training book for work.
Okay,
so I'm
explain.
Because the law involved in that case, in the middle of that book, is a death penalty trial. It is a death penalty case, beginning, middle, and end. The whole case, the whole one, is an arc. And so in the middle is a death penalty jury trial. And you will learn about a death penalty jury trial. When you read it, you will experience it. And you'll experience a case from the murder to the investigation to dealing with a client, all the way through the trial, the penalty phase, everything. So you will experience it. And the law is real. See, this is what I say right here in the little back here. It says double homicide, all clues point to a lonely housewife must journey through personal hell to understand her innermost fantasies. Can she find the man who protects her while making her dreams come true? The suspects are many and the law is real. Enter, if you dare, in the world of death penalty desires.
That's so well done. I love it. Even the back's great.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's very much targeted to and as a woman and as a man, can we have fantasy? Or is that not Christian? You can't fantasize. You can't imagine. Oh, you couldn't do that because you're a Christian, and we Christians. I think that's a big mistake. Here's one of the reasons why. because what happens is people say, I'm Christian and I'm good, so I don't have dirty fantasies, right? So they suppress it and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes unconscious and then it enslaves them.
Well,
If you're
then it comes
conscious,
out
you say,
in
okay, this is
unhealthy
my fantasy
ways.
world. What's that?
Right. Then it comes out in unhealthy ways.
Right.
It expresses itself in ugly ways that are. We could go on to the sex talk, but it's a gift. It's a God-given blessing that is meant to be loved and enjoyed, and just it's supposed to be a beautiful thing, but we've cheapened it so much. And then we've gone the opposite direction, trying to say that it's a dirty thing, and it's not. It's meant to be a beautiful, holy
And you know what?
thing.
And what results from those crazy fantasies is little babies, which are wonderful.
And they are. They're always
And
wonderful.
here's another one. I want to point out we got AJ who's on the road, I hear. How did AJ actually? She's probably the first person to have read it a front to back.
Wow.
Yes.
Very cool.
So
Big honor.
we got to meet in Orlando, and she got a proof copy because she bought the hardback, and I hand delivered it to her, and she read it.
Oh,
And she says she read it from like after we got done with dinner, I gave it to her, and she was all excited about it. And then she took it home, and she said she read it front to back, and she couldn't go to sleep. She had to.
I knew
She
you
was
were
up
going
till
to say
4
that.
a.m. in the morning
Yeah,
reading
that's a
it.
good book. If it keeps you from sleep, you know it's a good book. Oh,
Yes.
that's awesome. What a testimony to how well you write, right?
Well, and it's designed, this is the thing. I mean, there's a bit of manipulation in it, right? I mean, I am I do write, and it's fun. It was a real fun. It's funny because we talking about, we can't have fun, we can't fantasize. And AJ, I want you to comment on this because one of my favorite characters to write was High Z. High Z is about as far from me as you could possibly get. He's like a thug drug dealer who, uses women and all this,
Oh
right?
my goodness.
And it's so ridiculous. Yeah, here. So AJ says she took her 5 hours. She read it front to back. 11.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good book right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Get White Rabbit on here. I want White Rabbit's take. They got a little bit of preview that I read, but AJ's the first one I think that's ever read it front to back because she got the actual book and read it. Anyways, enough of that. So, okay, next topic.
Okay, hit me. Let's go.
Hit me with your bell. We're rocking. See, this is so much
We
fun.
are.
I'm so great. It's great to have guests on. Let me see. Oh, well, let's just kick this one off, dude. Of
Uh-oh.
course, we know Good Friday and Easter. That's about
Mhm.
bunnies and eggs and candy, right?
Oh, mercy. Yeah, I keep seeing these posts on Reddit about how it's a pagan holiday. It was never a pagan holiday.
No,
It
you're
was never a pagan
Christmas.
holiday.
Christmas is there's an
Christmas
argument there.
was. There's an argument there, but Easter's not. It never was. It was. They tried to associate a name of some god that they found somewhere that sounded like Easter. It didn't have anything to do with it. It didn't have anything to do with bunnies or eggs or any of that.
Easter is the key Christian holiday.
It is the Christian holiday. And if you ask them what their favorite holiday is, it's almost never Easter, which is so crazy to me because it is the foundation for the only thing that gives us hope. Don't you think that's kind of important? So I don't know.
But
I think
people
it
want to
cracks me
water
up.
that down. But well, what do you mean? What do you mean eggs and bunnies aren't part of Easter?
It's been totally secularized, that's fine because I think it gives us an opportunity to share our faith in ways that we couldn't otherwise. So I think there's a cool aspect. And we do the eggs, we do the bunnies, we've got the Easter baskets. It's fun. It makes it fun for kids and gives them something to look forward to and opens up, we have the little resurrection eggs. So each egg you open up, he's got food allergies, so he can't have all the candy, but he can get the little resurrection eggs and we can tell the story. It gives you an opportunity to share. But yeah, the hyper secularization, the commercialization of something so profoundly faith filled. We see it with Christmas too, but for some reason, this holiday seems so much more Easter bunny than Santa. At least with Santa, there was a Saint Nick. There was no
Right.
Saint Bunny. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, well, I don't know where the bunny came from either. Actually, the egg I understand. I mean, the egg I
The
can
egg, I
kind
get
of I
that.
could
I get
relate
that.
an egg.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that we were talking. I had a big dispute, and of course they're like, "You're the Catholic guy, so you got to answer this question," right? I'm like,
Right.
I'm like, really? And they
So
were saying like the tree is a pagan symbol. I'm like, well, my understanding is yes, that's true. The tree was adopted from a Norwegian or Northern Scandinavian tradition that was pagan. But the Catholics that came in and converted the Norwegians, or I think it was Norway, said this is a beautiful tradition and it doesn't conflict with Christianity. And
mm-mm.
so beauty is part of God. So we bring that and made that part of our faith. And it doesn't, if it's beautiful and it doesn't conflict with your faith, then celebrate it, right?
Well, God reused things that were pagan to begin with because they never belonged to these false gods in the first place. A tree doesn't belong to anybody.
Right.
And I
That's
love
another
the
good
Luther
point. Yeah.
story where he goes out and sees the stars and he brings it home and does I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if it's apocryphal, but it's a sweet idea that it was the stars through the trees shining through that was so pretty. And I mean, like even circumcision, that was around before the Jews. How do you think everybody knew what circumcision was? That was around before the Jews. He just repurposed it the same way he repurposed the Passover into the Lord's Supper. There's
Oh,
nothing
you're
wrong with
so
that.
wonderful. See, this is why I got chill in here. That's a very good point because see, this is one of the reasons that we know that Easter happened when it did was because Jesus was Jewish and he was part of the Jewish tradition and he was going to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. And this is part of the feast and it's the transformation of the feast into the body and blood of Christ, which is what actually physically occurred in the physical manifestation of Jesus and the sacrifice on the cross was a transformation. It's a miracle of faith, a miracle of salvation, and that's why we call it Good Friday
Mm.
because it's like how can the torturous execution of a man on a cross in suffering the most terrible, painful death that we could imagine and create as humans, our evil minds, how can that be transformed into a victory for God and good? Explain that to me, Jill.
It sure wasn't at the time. Everybody thought, just like lots of false messiahs that had come before him, they thought they would kill him off and the movement would die. That's just what they expected. And so everybody was in mourning. The disciples were in hiding behind locked doors, terrified that they were going to get executed as well. Nobody had really understood Jesus saying he was going to raise. He had told them over and over and over again that I'm going to come back. I'm going to be resurrected. Right
Well,
over the
and
head.
I love I will destroy this temple and bring it back in 3 days, right?
A
And
double
the
prophecy.
temple
Yeah,
is Jesus.
it is. But then in AD 70, the temple was destroyed not long after. I mean, the double prophecy is always a way to show the accuracy of the prophecy, but
And the
they were
fact that the
terrified.
fulfillment of all the prophecies were all
Everyone.
every prophecy was fulfilled. And that to me, I'll say it, that's a big,
That's mathematically impossible for
yeah,
120
that's a big,
prophecies to be fulfilled in one person.
very big apologetic
It
for
is a
me
huge one. It
is to
is.
say what is the proof? The fact that all of these prophecies are explained and in not in an easy way. Like nobody could
No.
fictionalize this story. It
No,
is
he
such a
couldn't control
crazy
where he was
whacked out.
born. No,
Huh?
he couldn't control where he was born. He couldn't control Herod attempting to kill all of the infants in that town, making them flee to Egypt. He couldn't control any of that. And the fact that it still was fulfilled, there's not a single prophecy that wasn't fulfilled through him. That one person. It's just mathematically impossible statistically for it to be an accident.
So
There's a
that to
certain
me,
level
that's
where it cuts
a
off.
pretty compelling, and the fact that the story is not a natural story. It's an unbelievable story. It's like this is so
Mm-hmm.
weird that to me, it's like this has got to come from someplace greater than man. It to me,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of an odd. You wouldn't create a man on a cross
No,
as
that would
being
be
a
the last
victory,
person would be your Messiah because that would
right?
be the
You're
most
gonna this humble
shameful.
manger born
Yeah. Mm-mm.
carpenter.
Yeah. It was
The
an honor shame
salvation.
culture. It wasn't right, wrong, or just, unjust. It was honor shame. And being shamed by being born so poor, being shamed by being naked, nailed to the cross, the worst punishment reserved for the worst of the worst. That's not who your Messiah would be. And you would never have women testifying to the empty tomb. Never. Their testimony would never be accepted. So you would, if you were writing it, you would write that men found the empty tomb. There's all of these little things in there that
Yeah,
show
so much.
it's
And
impossible
when I became
for it to
Catholic,
be men. Yeah.
I went through the whole Christian rite of initiation for the rite of Christian. It's RCIA. It's process. There's a Catholic, and they say you reconcile. They don't say you convert. You reconcile. But when
I
you
like
and
it.
at the end, we go through and we actually, you take baptism at your first time at Easter, right? And I remember it was such a moving moment, and the whole place was candle lit, and
Mm.
when we said, what shall we do with Christ? What shall we do with Jesus? It's like, crucify him, right? And you stand there in the church, and we are the people, and we speak that. The priest does the Jesus, and there's a lectern who says it, and then you have the people who are saying crucify. And in that moment,
Oh,
I'm
that's
telling you,
moving.
it was like I am condemning God, which is like, and it's not like something that happened 2,000 years ago.
Right. It puts you
We're doing
in
it
the
right
position.
now.
And we
And
are.
we
Every
are,
time we deny him. Every time. And it has the
which is
biggest power.
phenomenal. It's so resonant. It's so right now. It's so today. We all do that. And this is the thing, until you reconcile yourself to the truth of that,
Mm.
you're not going to be saved. It was such a moment, and it's hard to even explain until you've been through it or you've experienced it. But and every time I hear that, and we go through that in Easter's, crucify him, I think that's me, and it tears me up because I
It would
know
me
it's me.
too. It
It's
is.
not,
It's
this is why,
totally
like, a
you.
lot of say, well, it's the Jews killed Christ. No, I killed Christ, right? Me. It's
Absolutely.
not them. It's me. It's hard to take.
Mm. I do love your traditions. I love some of the Catholic traditions. And when the Protestant Catholic Church split, we lost so many beautiful traditions. Just like when the Christian church split off from the Jewish traditions, we lost so much beautiful tradition that was never meant to be thrown away and stuff like that. It's powerful for a reason. It resonates with us for an absolutely beautiful reason because, like you said, even Jewish traditions, you were meant to reenact them and place yourself in their shoes. The Passover, you were meant to identify with the oppressed Jews. It's, I think there's some beautiful traditions there.
Well,
Absolutely.
I'm reading about Geddy Lee, and this is funny. Geddy Lee, bass player for Rush. I will throw out, this is how the weird brain works. But I read his autobiography, and he raised Jewish, right?
Mm.
And you talk about Jewish traditions. And when his father died, he was young. He was in school, and that's the early life is really well written in that book. And he talks about how there was a period of mourning that was set out for a year, wherein he had to go through and he had to do all these Jewish ceremonies to mourn his father for a whole year. And that was really the last of his Jewish faith. He did it, and he was an honorable Jewish boy, and he honored his father. But he recognized, now he's a secular Jew now, but when he looks back at that time and he looks back at that tradition, he's like, it was so much work and it was so hard on me and all that. But the other thing it allowed him to do was end the mourning.
It
So
does.
at the end of the year, it's like, okay, your mourning period is over. Go live your life.
It gives you
Because if you
permission to
don't
move
have a
on.
ceremony,
Hmm.
you're trapped in what's like, well, when do I ever get out of this? Right?
Right.
You have to. Ceremony is a way for us to move through life.
It is. It gives us a way to process the information and then to move on. You have to face it, but then you move on. And I think there's so much value in that psychologically. I really do. And I think we threw away far more than we should have. So
Well, I want to do a little more. We're going to have to. I want to do a little bit of a little hard talk here,
do it.
a little hard faith talk, and you guys are going to stick with me, all right? We've
I
got a
like it.
few more minutes. We've got 45 minutes, or wait, 35 minutes to the expert. So in the meantime, I want to share this and talk a little bit about the Stations of the Cross, because my
All right.
buddy, my buddy, again, my Jewish Orthodox friend Joe, over in, keeps asking, "What is the Stations of Cross?" He's Jewish, so I looked it up. Here it is, old Encyclopedia Britannica. I can't get any more Old English than that.
Hold on one
Yes.
second, Steve. There's a quick emergency here. Let me pop out and pop right back, okay?
Okay, go
I'm
right
so
ahead.
sorry.
I'll take over. This is Catholic stuff. So what is the Stations of the Cross? Okay, here this is what you have is a little, you walk through, all Catholic churches will have stations. Sometimes they're represented by carvings on cathedral walls, but in this case, these are the 14 stations that are listed here in the Britannica. And it is the story of Good Friday and Jesus's crucifixion. And so you have, he's condemned to death, and then Jesus is made to bear his cross. He then falls for the first time. He meets his mother. This is so powerful, powerful. And Jesus meets his mother while carrying the cross to his execution, right? Simon is made to bear the cross. Veronica wipes Jesus's face. Oh, these are all such powerful moments. So and then you have Jesus falls for the second time. The women of Jerusalem weep over Jesus. Jesus falls for a third time. Jesus is stripped of his garments. Jesus is nailed to the cross. Jesus dies on the cross. He's taken down from the cross, and he's placed in the sepulcher. So these are what we call the Stations of the Cross. And each one of these, if you want to go on to the Catholic, you can search it up on the Catholic website, wherein they actually go through these different stations and the prayers that you have to give. Here's another one. I'm going to give you another little resource here if you want to. Okay, this is from Catholic Online. See here, it's catholic.org, Good Friday. And this goes through basically the Stations of the Cross, the story of Jesus and the crucifixion. And it's very, very complete here. And here's your different venerations. So here's Jill's back. Well, an interesting little fact about that is that on Good Friday is the one Mass we do not take communion. And it's another powerful thing, because a lot of people say, well, the Mass is the same thing over and over again. And there is a certain that, but there's a gift of ceremony. There's a gift of repetition of I don't know, it's a ceremony, like you said, tradition and ceremony. And when this ceremony gets disrupted by Good Friday, it's jarring. There's no music, there's no Mass, there's no, we get communion every Mass, and here you are denied it. It's really powerful.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
I was going to say, why wouldn't you? Because it was Passover, but that was Thursday night, not Friday night. So that makes sense. Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. That's interesting. Huh. I learned so much from you.
Here, Diana says, pilgrimage to Holy Hill in Wisconsin. Where is that?
What is that? I've never heard of Holy Hill.
I'll look that up. Thank you for that. I'll look it up.
Oh, do they go through the Stations of the Cross so you can visually see it?
And I'll share this little private thing just between you and me, Jill. We went over to Arkansas. Was it Hot Springs, Arkansas? And they have a huge Passion Play that's been going on, a giant cross. And we went to the Passion Play up there. It was a little odd. I mean, it's not something we normally do. It's not Catholic. It's just a Passion Play done by the city. It's like the largest continuously operating Passion Play in the country or something. And it was wonderful. My son went to that, and he really enjoyed it. And you would think this is not something your teenage boy would like.
I would not think you would enjoy that. That would be overwhelming and emotional. But
it was. Okay. It was moving because, like, oh, yeah, we go to church and we hear these stories, but to see it performed in real life is very a dramatic presentation. It is a powerful story that resonates with you, and seeing it, I think, really gave him a different perspective on his faith.
That makes sense. I like that, because it is, we try not to think about the details. Honestly, it was when my son heard the details for the first time of how gruesome the cross was that he was moved to find his faith in the first place. So I think it is important to go through it, but to be done well and accurately would be really hard. It would just be hard. It'd be hard to watch too.
Geronimo Kennel says in a lot of the cathedrals, and I think one of the most beautiful thing that man has ever done are the cathedrals, mostly in Europe, the Christian cathedrals, right? Some of the greatest work that man has ever created, most beautiful objects that we've ever done. And we, even today, I wish we would strive to create more beauty. However, part of the reasoning for that was that most of the world was illiterate.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to communicate the gospel message through sculpture and art and stained glass. And so those are, like you said, you're viewing the Stations of the Cross through the eyes of these sculptors, but it's a way to learn. It's another way to access the faith,
It
run by
is.
Carmelites. We have a Carmelite monastery right up here. And here's upon the horizons here. We've got another Protestant scholar here.
Oh,
He's a really,
wow. Look at
do you know
that.
Upon the Horizon?
No.
Okay, he's one of my
Did you know
favorites.
something?
He's always throwing in. He knows his Bible too, and he
Oh,
throws it in
I
there. So
love it.
he'll helps me out. Good to
I
see you.
love it.
The volume's a little low.
Oh,
Oh
let me move.
well, Jill. Yeah, who's
Probably
the
me.
guest? Slidey Pie. Would you introduce yourself again for people who are just joining?
Hi. I'm Jill. I'm a nerd. I'm a pharmacist turned theologian. Went to seminary. It was random. It was weird. It didn't make sense, but God calls and you do what you do. So now I have an online ministry called Graceful Answers where we hit the big questions. Why are we here? What's the point? Is God real? Are miracles real? Did any of it really happen? And we've been going through the book of Genesis verse by verse, really exploring what happened from a historical perspective. It's really fun. It's a lot of fun. It's fun to be a nerd.
Well, and the neat thing here, you've got a brilliant mind who has a lot of faith, who knows her Bible, and I would encourage you, if you have theological questions, you can go over to Jill's channel, and she gives she does online stuff, and you can go check her out, and she'll interact with you, ask her questions, because
Throw me
she
questions.
loves
I
this.
love it.
Yeah.
I really do. Or if you want to email me, gracefulanswersministries@gmail.com. Anything, throw it at me. I'd love to. It gives me ideas for videos, so it makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so anyway, Jill's somebody, one of my, Upon the Horizon, I've invited him on, but some people are less camera shy, more camera shy. And it's hard being a Catholic too, because I've actually asked my deacon to come on, and he's like, well, I've got to ask the bishop, and there's this hierarchy. It's like, well, who speaks for the church? And that's a tough question.
Yeah.
So and so having real personal interaction, like on YouTube. So I don't speak for the Catholic Church at all. I'm Catholic, but I don't speak for the church. I mean, that's why I refer to the catechism. And now there is somebody who's phenomenal, who's out there, who talks, and that's named Bishop Robert Barron. And if you ever want to, he's called Word on Fire. You don't know Bishop Barron?
No.
Oh my goodness, Jill, you got to watch Bishop Barron. He's a Jordan Peterson. He's interviewed Jordan Peterson several times.
Really? Okay.
Well, he is like the American Catholic evangelical mission guy. I don't know what his title is, but he's the guy.
Okay.
And he's written a number of great books. One of them is called Catholicism, and he just admires the Catholic Church. And he's just a great priest. Robert Barron, Word on Fire. If I was going to point to one guy to explain the faith, it's Bishop Barron, and the church represents that, or recognizes that, and has appointed him to do that. So he has this Word on Fire ministries. He's brilliant, and he looks to Peterson. He looks to Jordan Peterson, and he says, this man is touching something that we as Christians are missing the boat on. And he's had conversations with Peterson about how do we open the church? How do we bring the message of the church to the youth? Because when I went to the Peterson thing, it was all these good-looking kids. They're dressed into their tees, and they all these beautiful young people who were got their acts and their lives together, who were looking to the sky. It was a brilliant crowd. I was so impressed, and those are the people that should be listening. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that's something hard for the church to reach the youth today, because we do have the reputation of being, the prudes, the stuck up, hypocritical, judgmental. But I can tell you, I know people do have experience with it, but I've never been to a church like that. I've never been to a church like that. There are people, I'm sure, that behave that way, and it gives people a bad taste. But the majority of the Christians you meet are just average Joes. So it is hard to reach the youth, and it's wild that Peterson has nailed that demographic so well.
Right.
Diane,
And it's
I'm going to absolutely hit that topic.
That's a good question, because there's another one of these modern things, like You submit to your husband. How
Mm-hmm.
dare how you want
You
me
have
to
to
submit?
grovel, right? And that's the last thing we want to do, especially as Americans, because we're so independent. We have this independent spirit and, women's rights, and I have the right to be equal. And it's like, absolutely. And that was what was so profound about Christ. He was saying you're equal. Slaves are equal to masters, women are equal to men, which was just wild at the time. So,
He died for all of us.
absolutely. And it's so wild. Even the clearing of the temple was not about the vendors charging too much. It was because they were blocking the Gentiles from worship. It was for everybody. He was inviting the world in. So, yeah. Oh, Danielle,
Isn't
that's
Daniel
so
wonderful?
sweet.
Who's
Danny.
do you know Dr. There's more stuff. I need to look. Dr. Taylor Marshall. Do you know him?
Dr. Taylor Marshall. Nope.
Well, I am going to give you homework. You need to look up some Robert Barron.
I am.
Bishop Barron is phenomenal. He
You
is
know what I'm doing.
brilliant, so smart, and I just love his approach and his. You can just see God just pouring out of him. You know one of those people. It's just
Mm-hmm. You
the
can just,
light is
yeah.
on. Well,
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, and submission, it's interesting. Well, and going back to my death penalty desires book, and I'm not promoting, but see, I write what I think. I write like I think. This is just an exercise
Maybe
for
that's why I
me.
like your writing, because I like how you think. I
Oh,
like
well,
how
thank you.
logical you are.
Well, except that this book is almost a character study experiment for me. This was a very fun book to write. It was inspired. I wrote this in 10 days, you know.
You
know
did
this?
what?
I wrote this in 10 days.
You
Yeah.
wrote a book in 10 days. Of course you
Yes.
did. Of course
I
you
did.
did.
This was,
That's
yeah. In fact, I
amazing.
even put on here if you want to look in. I
That's
wrote it down because I kind
amazing.
of amazed myself, but it was inspired. It was inspired by
Wow.
God, I must say, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I just wrote it, just blasted out. Let me see. I think I even have it. Yeah, here it is. So if you look there, it was
Wow, you did.
where is it?
I
Where
see
is
you
it?
pointing to sexy. That's all I see.
No. Wait, it's in there somewhere. Oh,
Oh,
composed
you're so
primarily
funny.
between February 16th and 26th, 2024.
Wow. But you've been chewing on these ideas your whole life, I'm
Well,
sure.
not
Really?
really.
Wow,
No,
that's
no.
even more impressive.
It was inspired, and it was he was inspired, and it was a lightning bolt because I just got done with the Virgilio Aguilar Mendez case as well as a death penalty case. And so I was at like this peak efficiency. And then all of a sudden my deck was just completely empty.
Oh, I
And I
hate
was
that.
on Legal
I
Vice's
hate that.
show. I was in the chat, and David Nelson, who's in the chat, in our chat right now, he jokes with me because everybody jokes that I write all these books, right? And I'm like, oh yeah. He says you should write a book called Death Penalty Desires. Ha ha ha! Right? I thought it made me laugh. I was laughing so hard, and so I started joking like, oh yeah, this
Here's
sexy
what I
appellate
do.
lawyer,
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, and then I just started writing. It just started coming. It just started flowing, and there's a number of ideas that kind of intersected. It's complex. Maybe when I one of these days I'll talk about it, but I've talked a lot about it over time, but it just fired off.
Oh,
But
that's
when I
awesome.
got done with it, so I drafted this framework, and at the end, I had to finish the two main characters who have the central character arcs, the two main characters who has the thread, right? That was the kind of the last thing I wrote. I wrote this entire framework of the trial and the investigation, the whole thing. And the stuff I added at the end was kind of what God wanted me to say. And I hate to say it, it comes from a place. It's hard to explain, but if I tell you, it will give away. But there are
Okay, give it away.
messages.
I haven't read it
I
yet.
don't want to give away any
I haven't
spoilers.
read
There
it
are
yet.
messages
Don't
in
spoil
there
it.
that are inspired. Let's see. Question. We have a question from Wesley. How is Jesus told you no time to talk Allah to you all that you imagine Jesus thinks of you as Christians?
I don't
I don't know
understand
if
the
I.
question.
How is it that Jesus told you no time to talk Allah? What is that's Muslim stuff. To you all that you imagine Jesus thinks. I don't even know what that question means. You got to restate the question. See if I'm misunderstanding something. Here's another one. Maybe it's this one. Obviously, your real God is money, not Jesus. Oh, really? Okay, so we have somebody who's throwing stones. Though your lips say Jesus, you do not mean it. Are you talking your Omni branded barcode on your right? So we got somebody who's just being nuts.
All right.
All
I have
right.
no
Well,
idea.
I don't know what you're saying, but okay. Believe what you want. It is a free country, and actually, and the thing about when I was writing Prepare that I realized is that Christianity itself is required for individual freedom, because the Christian God wants you to love him and choose him. And in order for that to occur, you have to have free will and the free will to reject him.
And
Thoughts,
without that
Joe?
free will, there's no love, there's no choice. So people ask, why is there evil? Why is there evil in the world? Why would a loving God allow evil? Well, it's not that he's doing the evil, he's allowing the choice, and we're the ones choosing wrong. So, yeah, I agree. And I think, even like our Constitution and our human rights are all based on a Christian understanding of the world, or a Judeo Christian understanding of the world.
Upon the Horizon says, a raised Catholic, Protestant now, but not anti-Catholic or anything. And this is the thing. I mean, I was raised Protestant, really non-denominational Christian. I mean, I always thought Catholics were kind of weird. I mean, the ceremonies was kind of foreign to me, and I didn't understand it. It's kind of scary when I was a kid. And then I kind of became agnostic,
Yeah.
and then kind of it wasn't important to me. And then a series of things happened, and I found my faith, and I'm very happy. It's definitely been a positive impact on my life. But one of the things when I was like, well, why don't I become Protestant? I was like, well, what am I protesting against, right?
Yeah,
And,
I'm not a big fan of the label there.
yeah, and then I was like, well, and that's why the catechism's so great, because I was like, well, the answers that I was getting from the Catholic Church, to me, I couldn't argue with them. I thought there was so much wisdom and knowledge and 2,000 years of history of brilliance. And part of it is humility. I come at my faith through a bit of humility, and that's something that I need, because I can be arrogant. That's one of my greatest sins, is arrogance. And so I consciously choose to be humble. And you have to, that's why, what is it in the Bethlehem, you have to kneel to crawl into the church, because it's a matter of supplication. The physical act is symbolic of the greater good. Oh, we got Let's Go Brandon. Let's Go Brandon, $9.99. I guess I'm worshiping the almighty dollar. Okay, fair enough.
Oh my goodness. Is that a Florida man can in your picture? That is so funny.
Oh, look, and it's great.
Oh, that's funny.
Hey,
Oh, you're
Mr.
funny.
Brandon,
You're a hoot.
you have a book coming your way, a complimentary hardcover of Death Penalty Desires. I picked the R-rated version for you
Oh
because,
no. Yeah, I bet he can handle it.
well, what is your let's say, what is your perspective on? I mean, everybody, there's so many paths to Christ. This is another great thing, is that it's not like this is the way and that's it.
That's a big one. That's one of the biggest ones, is are there different paths to Christ?
Right.
Or
What
to
is
God?
your thought?
Well, there's the spoke theory that, all different religions are the path to the same God. And that's absolutely not true, because each faith has truth claims that can't be true at the same time. There's exclusive claims. So it can't be that way. But as far as Christianity, as long as you hold to the basic tenets of the Christian faith, as laid out in scripture, that is agreed upon by both of us, Catholic, Protestant, as long as you adhere to and submit to the Lord as your Savior through Jesus Christ. I mean, I pick your denomination. Those aren't salvific matters. That's not the basics. That's not the foundation. That's the icing on the cake. And yeah, they're important issues, but they're not heaven or hell issues.
Right.
So I mean, once you get past that heaven or hell issue, you're
again, another atheist attack would be, well, do you think the Protestants are going to hell? And my answer to that is, I'm not qualified to make that call. That's a God question, right?
right.
I have to follow my truth, the truth that I've been revealed to me, my faith, in the best way I can, and humble myself to know that I don't have all the answers. I will tell you why I believe what I do. I would love to have discussions with my friends atheist friends, agnostic friends, Catholic friends, Protestant friends, and for me to think, well, I believe what I believe, but for me to condemn you or anybody
Mhm.
else, who am I? That's God's
That's
choice,
not
right?
our job.
That's
Absolutely.
not
That's
my
not our
job.
job. And it's peripheral. It's peripheral issues. I mean, if it comes down to the basics that, you know, that are written in, if you believe in Jesus Christ, you have eternal life. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And anything on top of that is is for the scholars, is for, and I think it's important to work through your faith and figure out what you believe and why you believe it. But to condemn someone who also condemn anyone is not our place, because we too are sinners. We too are completely wrecking every choice we're given. But there, but for the grace of God go I. It's got to be based in humility, and you can't come in a conversation and honestly condemn someone and then expect them to agree with you. It doesn't make any sense. So no, it's
And
not my
ultimately, like
place to
the
condemn
God,
anyone.
God is not gonna like. I've never been to heaven and back, and
Right.
I can't speak to you what that's about or hell. I mean, although I'm a big fan of Dante, I think Dante's Divine Comedy
Dante had it
is
figured
like
out, you think?
masterpiece, huh?
Right? There's a reason that resonates with us, because it's a
Oh,
scary thing to think about.
but
I mean,
it's a perspective and it's a thought experiment. But anyway, so that's one of those. There's all these methods, and in fact, one of the things I talk about and prepare is overcoming some objections
mm,
to faith. And if you read like my perspective on the science debate, and why we lose this argument about moral absolutes,
mm,
I think that was one of my greatest inspired thoughts that I've had in my lifetime. Actually, is to answer the criticism, which is a valid criticism, that people who are non-believers who want to attack the faith, who like to say, well, there are no moral absolutes, and everything is very gray, and therefore, because of that, God does not exist. You can't make value judgments, and this, which is very secular, very modernist,
mm-hmm.
and I think I have a pretty good answer for that in Prepare,
Maybe.
meaning that we're separated. There is a universal truth. There is an ultimate good and evil, but we is our embodied, imperfect, short lifespan human beings are multi levels separated from that greater reality where those absolutes exist, and that we can't even express it or touch it because we're separated. And maybe that is a definition of God and heaven, is that those barriers between us and the
Mm.
cosmic will be eliminated. But I
See
don't
through
know.
the
It's
glass
above my pay
clearly
grade. Hmm?
versus see through the glass clearly versus the fuzzy mirror. You see it clearly then, and we can't even fathom, God or heaven or hell or anything like that, because that's just not it's not our reality. It's like a kid trying to understand what it's like to be an adult. It doesn't or trying to understand what it's like to be an ant. We
And
don't
that's
have the
why
perspective to understand that.
one of my favorites, the priest, one of my priest answers, I ask about what's this Trinity stuff, and and it's like if you understand the Trinity, you don't understand it, right?
You
It's
don't
because
understand it.
nobody can explain it. But
Because
actually, that's one of
you can
those.
understand parts of it. You can kind of get a general idea, but you can't fully understand it because it doesn't exist in our reality, in our
Well, and it's one of
perspective.
those. It's the way that we, as our imperfect humans, perceive
Hmm.
God in these three different ways. We can perceive Him through these three different manifestations. But for us to understand it, we can't understand God. We're just little short-lived, imperfect humans. So, well, I want to touch one more topic.
That
And
actually
Let's
has a
Go Brandon's
level.
here. I have a Let's Go Brandon topic, and I'm glad he's here for
Okay.
this one because this is a special shout out. And you're getting a bonus book, Mr. Let's Go Brandon. He's been a very nice supporter. In fact, Let's Go Brandon was a big reason for Brucey to exist. Um,
Aw.
so
Well, thank you. Let's go, Brandon, because I love that book. I think it's adorable.
it is. I love it, and we're working on it. You may be called upon again because next Christmas we're hoping for My Difficult Dog. So we'll talk when the time
Aw.
comes. I have another book already written. It just needs to get illustrated. But I have a Let's Go Brandon topic, and this then we'll quit. This will be our last topic, and we'll exit.
Okay.
And that is alcohol consumption
That's a big one. And I've
and
got
faith.
personal opinions about that. So,
Now let's just talk because I actually did a little study. I did a little pre-show prep, just a tiny little bit. And the faith does not require abstinence on Good Friday, even.
Really?
Yes, which I was kind of surprised. I thought,
Interesting.
Lent and
Well,
all
I
that.
mean, I
But the
mean
key
the
is
Lent thing, I don't know a whole lot about as a Protestant, so
okay.
that's something you'd have to explain to me a little bit better. But alcohol, I mean, Jesus drank wine, but it was a different time and a different place. Water was not as healthy of a choice, and it was a lot of times boiled off or watered down, and it was a local thing that you were supporting, like a local farm. It wasn't this billion-dollar industry trying to shove it down your throat. There were a lot of differences, and I don't think there's anything wrong with drinking alcohol. Obviously, to excess is never good.
Ex-
There's nothing
Well, now you
enjoyable
just
about
hit
that
it. See,
anywhere. It's the
this is the
excess.
key. The
It's
key,
the
anything to
excess. Yes.
access,
Anything to excess. Or
because
if
it
it's detrimental to you in any way. I don't believe that being impaired mentally is what God intended for us to do with it. It wasn't
right.
meant to be used that way. It was meant to be for joyful occasions. Is consumed very limited in limited amounts. And like I said, they boiled it off most of the time, so it was either in a paste that they would spread over bread, or they would drink it very watered down. I mean, if I
Well,
were those years, I would too.
here's
I don't
another
personally
interesting
drink anymore, but that's
secular
yeah, it
perspective.
was. It
What's
was.
that?
People had to drink alcohol because it was
Right.
safer. It was a much safer choice. So I don't
Yeah.
condemn anybody for drinking, even though I'm a Southern Baptist and that's what we're supposed to do. We don't. Even the church doesn't. We don't. I mean, if you're in leadership, you're
Oh,
not
I get
supposed
it.
to because it
Well,
can impair
you know
someone
my
else.
having gone to Stetson, we do have some Baptist jokes, right? And that
Oh,
is
I'm
why.
sure. But there's plenty. I can bring them all out.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can
like
bring them all
why
out.
is it that Baptists don't have sex standing up?
Oh no, I don't know.
Because
Do I
people
know?
might think they were dancing.
That's the best one I have ever heard.
Occasionally, I have one or
That's the
two
best
jokes.
one I have ever heard. It's a little bit dirty and a lot of it funny. That is
It's very
brilliant.
funny. Come on,
Oh,
Uh,
that's going in my repertoire. 100%. 100%. Yeah,
uh,
that's funny. Yeah, no, we're not supposed to. This is the traditional, way back in the day. And I get it that, going to the honky tonks and getting frisky on the dance floor. Yeah, that's probably going to lead to some bad places. Getting drunk is going to lead to some bad places. But instead of a solid prohibition, wouldn't it be better just to counsel wisdom?
oh, I have another joke going here. I don't tell this is not, I have never told this one online.
Oh,
Here's another.
oh, I can't wait.
And this
I
is a
can't
true
wait.
story. This is a true story from my family past history in one of my family history, right?
Okay.
And uh, we were a lot of my family were Church of God and Methodists. Okay, so
Hmm.
going back and so there was what they used to call camp meetings, and so they would have camp meetings, which were Bible revivals, right? So
Hmm.
this was back in maybe the 1920s, maybe 30s. Okay, way, way, way back in the time. And one of our precocious little girls was going to a camp meeting, and they were dancing, and they were kicking up dirt, and they were dancing like little
Oh
kids
dear.
do. And
Isn't that sweet though?
one of my older aunts brought the girl back, and she says, "Now, you know, uh, good little Christian girls, they don't dance like that, right? They don't dance with boys."
Hmm,
And the little girl said, she's
girls.
like 8, and she turns and says, but Auntie, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Methodist."
Oh, poor thing. That just breaks my heart that
That
anybody
brings
took her joy that way.
Well, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, right?
Yeah,
Is
it's trying to it's the same thing that the Pharisees did with the Jews. It was trying to add extra boundaries around the law to keep people from getting close to it. But all that does is it piles on a burden that nobody can live with. And everybody's bound to fail. And I love the chat. I am seeing so many topics that I cannot wait to
oh,
hit.
I
Talk about
got
the
the
different
don't I have a great
translations.
chat?
And
These
I
are
can't
some
wait. You guys are giving me some great topic ideas because I eat this stuff up. You guys are
I do
awesome.
too. I love it, and there's so much history and depth, and I like to have these faith streams once in a while. And what better day but Good Friday to have a faith
Absolutely.
stream with a wonderful friend and a good person,
No.
a smart person. This is a pharmacist, man. This is somebody who actually studied and prescribes drugs.
I just fill them. I don't prescribe. I just
Oh,
fill them.
Phil, well, fair enough.
I count
Um,
pills.
well,
I count
and
pills.
I'll throw one more topic out and see
All
this
right,
because
do
the
it.
expert's not up yet. He's still, we're waiting on the expert. I got him I'm waiting after, so I got him up. As soon as he comes on, we'll shut down because I want to. And then we got to do the Ghazni raid thing. But I have another
Yeah.
topic, and that is this. See, one of the things I love about the Catholic Church is the beauty of the cathedrals and the beauty of
Mhm.
it's like we're going to do everything in our human power to worship God. So when I build a building, it's going to be the most beautiful I can do. I'm going to build a beautiful window. I'm going to build a beautiful everything, the beautiful music and beauty, beauty, beauty is a way to celebrate God's presence with everything that we have, right? Now, the opposite of that is like the shaker, like whip ourselves and plain and everything in the human world is evil and sinful and we need to beat ourselves and then eventually and God in heaven is separate. But see, to me, that's the problem. It's like it's a separation from God
That's
as opposed to a
dualism.
celebration of the gift of God.
Exactly. It's dualism. It's saying that the physical is evil and the spiritual is good, but that's not the case. Otherwise, Christ never would have come in human form. It's a whole thing. It's a whole theological thing. But you're absolutely right that the extremes of either side. I love the beauty though. Like we're told to put our heart and soul into our work as if we're doing it for God Himself. And He gives us this creative side that's reflective of His creative spirit. He's given us this beautiful world. The Garden of Eden had all of these jewels and fine metals for them. Can you imagine what they would have done with that had they not wrecked it so early? I mean, we're given that creative spirit. So why wouldn't we worship through our work and create beautiful things?
And that's the thing. Like when the church, we're always getting on your knees and you're praying, and you're genuflecting, you're saying it's because it's active involvement. I'm going
It
to
is.
worship with everything and participate as part
Mhm.
of the mass and interact with the church. So, yeah, it's great. Well, any final thoughts? So the expert's up, and I'm going to release you all to Mister the expert, and then we're going to do the
Let's
Ghazni raid
go.
thing. Although I don't know what he's doing. He's going to do some secular thing, but you've done your duty. Go to church on Easter. Do
Can't
your
wait.
best. What
Big
is your
family
message,
time.
Jill?
Pastels, and you got to have the white shoes, the full Southern thing. You got to dress it up. It's fun. We're gonna have a great time. Thank you for this really fun night. This was an unexpected joy, and I really appreciate it. Always
Yes, well,
fun hanging out with you.
always fun. Thank you for all your wisdom. It made the hour go by like a breeze. As
Oh,
usual, it's always a blessing to have you on, and God bless you. Happy
thank
Easter.
you. You too. You too, chat.
All
Happy
right.
Easter, everybody.
Now
See you
remember
guys
when
later.
we shut down here, what are you going to do? You're going to say Ghazni raid over on the expert, right? You got to do that because I
That'll be
love that.
fun. Let's do it.
All right. Good night.
Good night, guys.